Hi and good evening. My name is Ronnie from Equine Voices, and today's special guest is Betsy Vonda from Canada, and I'm really excited to chat to her. Initially, I heard about Betsy, sorry, on a podcast that I was listening to, and I thought I need to get this lady on for an interview, and she was with another lovely lady who I'm sure Betsy will talk about during this interview. But let's bring her on so she can introduce herself and say what it is that she does, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Betsy. So the floor's yours. Go ahead and explain to everybody a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Betsy Vonda. I'm here in Barrie, Ontario, Canada, so about an hour north of Toronto, if anyone's familiar with that. I am a postural and performance consultant. So I like to come in and be an unbiased set of eyes to help owners see their horse and work on the relationship. But really, more so now, I help get to the root of some performance issues or chronic lameness or behavior. So I initially started, I've been competing in barrel racing and pole bending and Western performance events since I was a small child. And then through my own kind of mysterious lameness journey with my own performance horse, it led me into this world of rehab and behavior and relational horsemanship. So I know that you've had Josh Nickel on recently, and he is definitely a huge piece to me understanding horses and the way that we can communicate with them differently. And Warwick Schiller has also played a big role in that. And then, yes, when I met my now mentor, Celeste Lelani Lazaris, in December, my world took a whole other shift. And she has brought me this, what I feel has been this missing piece to really understanding correct biomechanics and correct movement patterns in horses. So now I am helping her with her work in the balance for movement method, and along with my relational horsemanship. And I'm also a paramedic, so I have a lot of I guess I don't want to say experience in trauma, but dealing with people in a time of emergency and very high stress and very delicate situations. And I've met obviously a lot of people who deal with chronic pain and a lot of people just struggling emotionally. And it has also, I see that in some of what I dealt with as a child and as a young adult. And it's just helped me come to the horse world with this, what I feel is somewhat of a unique perspective. And I'm definitely just overwhelmed and like so grateful for all of the amazing people I've gotten to work with, especially in the last few years since I've stepped into behavior and rehabilitation with horses. So that's I guess not the shortest summary, but what I'm currently doing a little bit on my background.
So that's a lot of things that you're doing. So are you still a paramedic then? Do you still work as a paramedic?
Yes. Yeah. So I am 20-ish weeks pregnant. So I'm in the process of actually taking an early mat leave. And I do work for the County of Simcoe in an education coordinator role. So I am still a certified paramedic, but I haven't actually worked on the road consistently since 2018. And that was due to a series of head injuries. And that actually led me into osteopathy, which I also discovered was extremely helpful for the horses. But again, this is kind of the way my life unfolds, that I have things happen and then they actually lead me to some of the greatest, most, eye-opening, beneficial therapies or awarenesses. So I've been working in education with emergency responders since 2018, and then I've been really teaching. I taught a few clinics, and I taught when I was younger. Since actually, I think it was 2008 is when I taught my first clinic. So I've had teaching experience in both a professional and the horse education world. So it's cool to be able to bring those skills together now, as well as I'm helping people with their horses. Because it's one thing for me to come in and do the work with the horse, but I really want the owners to feel empowered with knowledge and education, that when I leave, that they have a better understanding of not only their horse and how their body works, but also their mind and their energy and how they can have a better relationship with them.
So on the energy side, is that
Mhm.
where Josh came into it more? Is that?
Yeah, so I had already been doing a lot of like personal development, I would say, from my early 20s. So when I was in shift work and, trying to find this new balance in my, adult job and my adult life, I had kind of gone into the fitness realm and into the bodybuilding world. And I was introduced to mindset and the way that we talk to ourselves, and the way that that can affect your energy and the vibration you put out to the world. I would say that's when I first started to be introduced to that work. But then when I came across Josh, I listened to Josh's podcast with Warwick Schiller and realized he was in Alberta, so he's a few provinces over from me. But I was like, oh, I love the way that he talks about the owner's energy, and also the way that he relates it to how we can communicate with our horses, and started to raise the awareness in that world. But I was already starting to find layers of that before I met him. I just felt that I really connected with his work and the way that he was educating and helping people understand themselves with the layer of the horsemanship relationship. And it really helped me be able to explain pressures to to people, right? And then changing out the word pressure for intention. And I was like, I love that, because that's really, again, it just energetically related to me more so, being like, yes, we use pressure, but in society we almost have this like negative association to even that word. So when we even just change the word to intention, what's our intention when we're interacting with our horses? What do we want them to feel from us? I was like, yes, 100%. I totally relate to that. And he just really helped me, I think, become a better educator as well, by providing this other lens, another perspective on ways to communicate and to help people understand what we're actually doing and how we can communicate more efficiently with our horses.
Wow, that's brilliant. And I know that you mentioned so you mentioned that you're doing a course with animal communication, or
Oh,
is that
soon. Yeah, I would like to. I've been looking into a few different options, because I definitely feel like I guess because it first was brought to my awareness by another friend and mentor in Germany, Nancy Heiber, and she said, it's possible to pick things up from horses, like to feel what they're feeling. And I was like, oh, I didn't even like, again, it's funny how it's not on your radar, and then someone just like raises your awareness to that. And then I experienced that with one of my training horses. So he was a restart, an off the track thoroughbred, and he was doing fantastic. But then I had started to introduce some lope work, and I started like, he would occasionally kick out, and every time that I would ride him, once we went into the lope work, I started having some like left lower back pain. And it was around that time that we had been talking about it, like about this possibility. And I remember getting on him, and we were just walking, and I remember like it starting to feel it, and then I got off of him and it would go away. And I was like, interesting. I wonder if this is what she was talking about. And then I, at this point I was like, okay, I think there's still something, we should probably involve the vet at this point, because he'd been doing fantastic. He was a very explosive horse when I first met him. He was highly anxious, and we'd done a lot of, relationship and connection, and just letting him, tell me how he felt, but also showing him that I like, you can tell me how you feel. It's okay. I will respond. I will respect your nose. And he had come so far so quickly. But then again, as we started to increase the workload, he started to kick out at canter. And I was like, well, that's not quite right. And we'd been involving the osteopath, because I noticed that he kind of tracked off with his hips. And so there was a few things coming in that I was like, I think we should maybe involve the vet. And then she ended up finding an old stifle injury in this horse. So it was like, oh, that explains a lot, And then we kind of knew at that point there was only so much he could do. There's only so many limitations to his career. And, but through that then explained why I was getting this back pain from him, because it was coming up through his back into my back. So it was just my first, I would say, really obvious experience of, wow, I can pick things up from horses. And I really started to feel into that. And then one day I actually had a horse call me into the paddock. And this is something that I was like, when it happened, I'm even just getting emotional just thinking about it, because she had come and she was living, and just due to the barn dynamics, she'd been separated from her companion and she wasn't doing much. And my horse trailer just back to her paddock. And I just noticed her one day, just like kind of like sending this energy towards me, like basically inviting me into the field. And I was busy. I had 3 training horses at the time, but I just went and got my grooming glove on and I just went to her and I was just grooming her and I just started bawling my eyes out. And I was like, whoa, like I'm tearing up just talking about it, because all this emotion's coming back. And I was like, whoa, like I have never had this happen before, where I actually had a horse like call to me, like call me to them, and then have all of that come through. And like I'm literally just crying thinking about it. But it was just so profound and so undeniable. And like I was in a really good mood, and like I had, I was like going about my day and had already had a wonderful ride on one of my training horses. So then to just have all of this come up, it wasn't me. Like that was not inside of me. I was being the mirror for her, and I could just feel all of that coming through. So I've had quite a few experiences like that since, where I'm so dialed into the energy that the horse is presenting with, that I just want to dive in a little bit more and have someone kind of guide me and help me really develop that ability to listen that I do believe we all have, because we all have instincts, right? We all have this intuitive ability. It's just, again, if it's not on your level of awareness, you may not be totally, in tune to it. And I've been living my life with this intuitive, like once I kind of found that I could listen and I guess function. Like I remember, if anyone knows who Bob Proctor is, like he's a Canadian law of attraction. He teaches about the law of attraction. And he used to always say that he's passed since, but he'd say, don't worry so much about how, just start living into the life and taking action in the direction of your goals. And, when you raise your vibration, I remember watching one of his YouTube lectures, and he would say how things will start arriving to you in your life if you're functioning at that same vibration. And that has literally been the story of my life ever since I learned that. And it's been very profound, because it's how probably we met. It's how I met Celeste. It's how I got my current position. It's how I met my husband. Like there's so many things that have happened in my life once I started just taking action in the direction. So I know there's that energetic level to life as well, that when you're vibrating on a different level. So I think I'm just at the point where I'm really looking forward to meeting someone and entering into the world of like, you, cause you do some animal communication, right? So, you get it. But I'm just like, I'm arriving at that place where I'd love to, find a course or find someone to help guide me to better tune in to what is possible. Because I know several people now, and I've spoken to, and we've used a few different animal communicators. And when you just have that much evidence of things they tell you, and like, there is no way you could know that, right? Like there's no way you could know that. And even recently we had one speak to a horse I have for rehab, and she was telling us all these things, and my osteopath was coming that night, and there was a couple physical things, and she was like, yep, for sure, right here. Like that was this exact spot. And when she told us that, we were like, oh my God, I got like goosebumps. And the horse was like, yeah, that's the spot. Like you could tell from his body language that she had zoomed in on this one little place on his spine where it's possible his tail, he had showed her that his tail had been flipped up. And he'd gotten this little impingement kind of between his like sacrum and his and where his tail. And sure enough, the osteopath was in there and was like, yeah, right here. And he was like, that's the spot. And I'm like, okay, again, how could she know that? Right? Like there's no way. And that's just one example I have of many that the horses have communicated things to the humans that there's no way that anyone would even know that. And I'll just share one more story. If there's any people out there who are like, oh, animal communication, I'm not sure about it. I had another horse come for training, and she still, I say she carries like a little piece of my heart, because she was such a hot mess. I will say that when she came, like emotionally, physically, there's so much going on. And we had an animal communicator talk to her, and she told her, and we suspected she was suffering from sleep collapse among many of her other symptoms. And she told her that she was having this really bad upper right jaw pain. And it was really bad. It was causing headaches, and it really made it hard for her to focus. It made her very anxious. And she was like, please, like, they need to know about this. So we'd already planned to have my performance vet out to do her teeth again. And so we didn't say anything to her. I didn't say anything. And I just, had her go in there and have a look and look at her teeth. And she said, huh, interesting. And I'm like, what'd you find? She's like, well, she has this slab fracture in her upper right tooth. And I'm like, okay, which one? She's like, eighth, kind of near the back, like upper right eighth tooth is broken. And I was like, so guess what the communicator said? So it's like when you have, it's not like I was testing my vet or anything, but I just wanted her to go in there unbiasedly, right? And see what she found. And then sure enough, she's like, yeah, she's got a slab fracture right up there. And it was, missed by another vet and who had done her teeth before. So it, and she got her balanced, and that was just another part of her rehab process. And she left just incredible. Like, couldn't believe the transformation in this horse. And she was only with me, I think, for less than 90 days, but we just did the teeth and the farrier and the osteo and the emotional work and helped her through her trauma and reconnected her to humans and just gave her, a voice. And the way that horse just transformed will forever be with me. But it was just, another little piece to the puzzle that, it is worth sometimes being able to actually, because how many times have owners said that? I wish they could just tell me what was wrong. Well, I would like to hone that ability and allow and be capable of horses telling me what they feel is wrong. And I have been talking to another communicator who told me as well, though, she's like, because we've had a couple of conversations, she's like, it's interesting though, because it's their perspective is very different than ours. Like, because they don't have, and this is my perspective on it, but I think it's because they don't have as much as a developed frontal lobe. They're way more present, I think, than humans are. That sometimes something like she was talking about one horse, and she's like, I know that he has this injury, but to him, he just feels all of this. Like, he doesn't realize that that's because he doesn't have this one sense anymore. So to him, he's experiencing that very differently than, a human would be like, well, clearly you have all that because, this has happened. But to the horse, like, he wasn't associating that loss of a sense to all of his other senses changing. And, but that was his experience. So I think as much as we think horses experiencing certain ways, I think it would be very beneficial to be able to communicate with them and hear it from their perspective. And then if we could, communicate back and say, okay, well, this could potentially be what's actually going on. Are you open to this? And helping them potentially change their perspective or be on board with the rehab, or, I just think there could be so many opportunities within that. And I think it would just be very beneficial to my very holistic practice that I'm already employing. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And you are so right that everybody has the ability, but it's not just, you're probably doing it and you don't realize, Betsy, you're doing it in your work way. So it might be that you do something and think it's your idea when actually it's resonating from the horse, but it feels like it's your idea.
And that is so funny you say that, because that happened. The animal communicator we just had talked to this, the buckskin horse. She's like, he keeps showing me two. And I was like, okay, the only thing I can think of is that we were working with him and it was 2 weeks from his diagnosis. So he was diagnosed with kissing spine, and me and his owner were just standing in the arena, and he happened to be standing in the exact same position that I had taken the very first photo of him. He was standing in that exact same position. And all of a sudden it literally just popped in my mind. It's like, oh, we should take a progress photo. But we were having like a complete sidebar conversation like that. But for whatever reason, and again, at the time I was like, well, I just know, maybe I noticed that he was standing like that. But he was saying to her, two. And I'm like, the only two I can associate with is that we took this photo at 2 weeks. And it was a very profound photo. Like, that photo I've shared with a lot of people because it was so just like, oh my God. Because again, when you see your horse every day, or in my case, he's not my horse, but I see him every day in the training process, you don't necessarily see the changes. So when we took that photo and put them beside each other, we were just both like jaw on the floor, oh my God, I can't believe how much he's changed in 2 weeks. So that was a very profound photo for us and for, you know, my involvement in Celeste's work, because I'd just been just about a week into her work at that point. And I was just like, oh my God, look at this. Like, and he had been treated by the vet as well, but it was just wild to see how different that horse could look in 2 weeks time. And again, she's told me, she's like, well, he probably told you to do that. It's like, oh, he can do that? She's like, yeah, it was probably his idea. And I was like, oh, like, well, that makes sense, because we were just chatting and then out of nowhere we're like, oh, we should take a photo. And it did feel very random and very kind of like, oh yeah, we should do that. But it didn't really feel like my idea in the way that it just like kind of popped in my head. So again, when she said that to me, I was like, interesting. Because that's the way sometimes, and I was calling it more intuition. I was saying, well, I feel like we should do this right now, or I feel like we should do that right now. That's a lot of my work, is I just am with the horse and I'm just trying to feel what we need to do in the time. And it didn't really open my lens even now until you're saying it, that the horse may be making some suggestions to me. Like, that is amazing. But like I said, I have an example. It makes so much sense that could be an option.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's important that you get the message. So sometimes messages come through the horses, or but it might come from somewhere else. And sometimes you have other animals that talk on behalf of another animal. This is similar to people. This is from my point of view. Obviously, there's different kinds of communicators, and they'll have the way they work. But from my point of view, sometimes if you get a stoic horse that doesn't really want, so I won't use the word shut down, but they just that's their life, and that's what, you know, they're doing their life, and then another horse will talk for them, or another essence will talk on their behalf, which is quite sweet. When I first used to go out and practice doing this, because I'm self-taught, I would go down livery yards, and it was so funny, and there'd be these bits of conversation coming up from all over, and I would just literally write down whatever came into my head. And to me, it didn't matter. I wouldn't be embarrassed, because if it didn't mean anything, it didn't mean anything. But if somebody came back and said, oh yeah, I can take that, it was like, oh, okay. And there was I don't know if I've said this story before. It was a bit of a funny story. I'd gone to see a client, and this was at the early stages, and we was chatting away, and we were sat there, and I said, okay, so your horse, I gave most of the message, and then I said, oh, she just wants you to, when you go out riding, just to pay her attention rather than the people you're riding with. And she says, oh, especially one person in particular. So I was sort of saying a little bit more, and then she says, no, that doesn't mean anything to me. I went, okay. So we carried on talking, and then I said, no, I'm sorry, she's coming back again, and she wants me to say this, you know, she wants me to say this again about you riding and paying her attention, not the person you're riding with. She went, no, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. I went, oh, that's fine. But in the meantime, there was these people walking past as we were doing this, and then the third time I said, do you know what? She's not letting this go. So, but if I have to say it again, so whether you take it or not, and then she went quiet, and she just said, I couldn't say anything because the person you was talking about was right behind you. So it was so funny. I was going, oh, okay, so long as you know what she reads. And it was just a comical thing. And then sometimes I get quite a lot of messages in my car. So when I sit in my car, it's almost like you're focused on one thing and the information comes through. And once I've linked in, actually not even if I've linked in, but horses I have seen will sometimes pass messages on, and I pass them on to the relevant person. So I'll start by writing it in my phone, because sometimes it comes as one word or a feeling, and it's only when I acknowledge it that the rest flows. It's like having a conversation with a friend. If you're talking and the other person's not listening, you're not going to carry on chatting.
No, you're not going to. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So then I will, if it's in the UK, I will say, I just picked up this. Does it mean anything? And then if they get back to me straight away, then it's like, yeah. So then I get the rest of the message. Whereas if it's somebody in another country, I'll just, I record it now, and I'll do the recording. And as I start, the rest of the information flows through.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then I pass that on.
That is really interesting. Yeah, because that's what I've kind of from meeting different communicators, that everyone seems to have a different flow or a different way of communicating, and I think it's amazing because it's just as individual as we are as individual people,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how the information will find its best way to come through. I think for our best understanding, that's the way I'm
Mhm.
starting to interpret it. Like
Yeah.
some people use more signs and some people use more words. One communicator told me that, she's had horses speak to her in other languages because that's just the language that they were around. So she'll have to write it all down and then have someone translate it after, because it all comes in whichever language that she was, or wherever, if they were imported, especially. So she said horses speak French to her because they were imported from France. And I'm like, oh, and she's like, and even in the language they use, like they'll call it like, like here in Canada, we call them, stalls, but over in Europe, people call them boxes. So like they'll use that language, like the different, or the livery instead of the stable. Like she's like, they'll use those other terminology instead of, the Canadian, but again, it's where they came from. And I'm like, oh, that's too funny that, they have that, even though again, people are like, but they don't speak English, they don't speak French. I'm like, but it's all they hear. So they're trying to communicate with us in the way that they know humans communicate. I guess that's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah. I've never had, so I have, so if one is communicating with me and they're timid, I will get the feeling of timidness, or I'll get the softness with that personality. It's more the sense of who they are. And sometimes you can have a gelding that's quite feminine, and you can have a mare that's quite masculine. So because I ask for is the name and the sex, and the age, because that goes with what I'm picking up sometimes. And I'll say, well, the masculinity to me is to show me that they can be strong, but it depends what goes with the words as well.
Very interesting.
And I wanted to say to you, because I was picking up something. So
Yeah.
when you have, so your communication will be relevant to where you are in your life and what you're doing. So a communication to me, if I'm not in a place to be able to help them physically, they will give me the information I need to go to somewhere else, or to point the owner to go to a chiropractor or a vet or whatever. Whereas because you've got quite a varied type of work that you do, your communication, the horses that come to you are going to be lined up to be in your place for
That
you to
makes a
help
lot of
them.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah, because
So
yeah, it does. Yeah.
there's no time scale. There's no such thing as time. So it's all, I mean, I can't go into that because that's not my area.
Yeah.
But it's all fitted in, and they're with you for a reason. So it's like, there's no point in me getting a message for somebody in China if I can't link some way to China.
Yes.
It's not impossible, because I can get messages to all over, but there has to be a thread, a connection somehow, even if it's through 5 different people, to get the message there. It's like lightning; it will find the easiest route to get to where it needs to go to.
And
Okay.
it's so like amazing that you say that, because that's what I've been feeling. And like I even say to people, it's like when you start moving in a direction, things start arriving. And I just felt like the next horse and the next horse and the next person and the next experience. And like I've just felt this, like, I don't want to call it a trickle, but like this trickle of people and experiences and horses. And that's what I've really felt, is like each horse arrives to me because I'm in the place to help them, but also I know enough how to, or not enough, but like I'm in the right position to then also them almost prompt me to learn the next thing to help them, that will also then help the rest of the horses. Like I would say with each horse that has come to me for a restart or a rehab or just training in the last 4 years since I started to step into this different way of seeing and working with horses, that it's just each horse keeps arriving. And even now, like a lot of the people that are reaching out to me, and now that I'm doing virtual consults, it's been amazing because I can help horses all over the world. But in a lot of cases, I've only had to refer, because I will refer out. So if I feel like, yes, your horse needs, like, you need to see the vet, or you need a body worker involved, or you need someone else beyond me. But a lot of what I've just been asking for more recently, or referring to, is for farrier x-rays. Because a lot of people that I'm working with already have body workers, or already using chiropractors, already have everyone in their wheelhouse, I'll say. So the horse has already been, a lot of these horses have already been through or seen multiple practitioners, and they're still not okay. And the owner still feels like there's still something there. And in some cases, that everyone's telling them their horse is okay. And I take one look at them and I'm like, oh my God, they are not okay. I see this, 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 and this. And they're like, thank you. I felt like a crazy person because everyone keeps telling me my horse is okay. And I'm there to validate them and tell them, no, your horse is not okay. And this is why you're feeling what you're feeling. And like I said, it's been pretty cool that you say that, because that's what I'm still feeling now on a much bigger scale. As horses are coming to me, they're truly meant to like come to me. And obviously I still have my Celeste as my mentor. So if I do kind of like, I'm not feeling 100% sure on this one, she's been amazing, that I'll, reach out and consult with her. But I definitely feel like I'm in this neat place where horses are arriving to me, and it is for me to help them. Or even, I used to say all the time, like, even this is in the ambulance, I used to get patients and I was like, you were meant to get me today. Like, you were meant to get me. I'm the paramedic of all the paramedics in the service today. You were meant to get me, for us to have a conversation about your nutrition, or for us to have a conversation about, how you're living your life, or your relationships, or, the energy. Like, I've had a few patients that, they are chronic illness sufferers, and they've fallen into the cracks of the healthcare system. And I remember one in particular, this person was having, and had been having, excruciating abdominal pain and issues for 5+ years, had many invasive investigative procedures. And I remember getting her, and my partner at the time too, he was actually lactose intolerant. So he loved it when I had these conversations with people. And I was like, has anyone ever told you to do an elimination diet? And she just looked at me like, I'm sorry, what? And I'm like, stop eating dairy, processed foods, corn, sugar, gluten, all these things, and see if that's why you're having abdominal pain. And she just looked at me like I had 4 heads. She's like, are you kidding me? She's like, it could be as simple as that. I said, absolutely. You could be lactose intolerant, right? And she's like, I have seen so many professionals, and I just got endoscopies and colonoscopies, and no one told me to stop drinking milk. And I'm like, oh, you sweet thing. Like, I'm so sorry. And, but it was just like, she was meant to get, that particular day, both of us, but really like me, like I felt that. And I've had several patients. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I actually had several people arrive in the back of my truck, and them, you were totally meant to get me so we could talk about, your nutrition or your lifestyle or whatever. Cause I was one of those paramedics. I wasn't just one doing, red pill or blue pill. I was like, okay, so how are your stress factors? How's your lifestyle? How are your relationships? Like, if I had someone with chest pain, I wouldn't just ask them specifically about their chest pain. I'd basically do like a risk factor assessment of their entire life. Because we know there's lots of different causes of chest pain, and looking at, all areas of your life helps me determine if this is actually ischemic chest pain, if it's, potentially a panic attack, if you've had a, physical trauma, like, where it just helped me narrow it down. And it's funny because, like I said, I would get these patients arrive to me, and now the horses are arriving to me, or the humans are with the horses are arriving to me. So this is what I mean. Like, when you step into, I think, who you're meant to be, and like, what you're starting to feel like, I definitely feel like I'm stepping into my purpose, very much so these days. And like I said, the universe just keeps bringing me the next people and the next thing, but I never thought about it that way as well. So thank you for that. That's very, very interesting.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I mean, the old saying, like attracts like, and what you give out, you get back. But actually, I'm discovering more and more that if you're, we all know about being present. So if you're present,
Yes.
which is great for horses because that's what they do.
Yeah.
If you're present and you're in that moment, that's when you have clarity or peace and calm, and you have those light bulb moments. But it's also, it's what's attracting other things to you. So I mean, we all know about manifestation. If you want to manifest it, you draw a picture of it, you focus on what you want, that sort of thing. But actually, I'm discovering more and more that if you, yes, you can do that. A dear friend of mine says, is it intention, attention, no tension? And, but I've been listening to Abraham Hicks videos that pop up. So things come along when you're in the right vibration,
Yes.
and you can listen to something and you can see something and you go, yeah, I get that. But then you can hear it maybe a few weeks later or a few months later, and you get it again from a different perspective and you feel it stronger. And I've seen these videos pop up, you know, quite often, but for some reason I clicked on one and I listened and I was laughing because I thought, this is where I am now. This is it. There's no, it's as simple as that. We make it so difficult. And I'm finding that things are coming along very quickly. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example because it's not always things. It's hard to put it into words, but it's, yeah, I can't even put it into the littlest word at the minute, but I just know, as you said earlier, that the right people, the right vibration, because you're at this certain vibration and you're attracting similar for whatever reason, for forever, how long. I just want, okay. So as you were talking earlier about horses, so you are very intuitive. I'm sure you're aware of that anyway.
Yeah.
And it's been there from day one. And like I said, the communication for you will be based around what you're doing because that's when it's going to be most beneficial. Okay, so that wouldn't be for maybe so much for me because I would have to look for external sources to help me go beyond that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And as you were talking, so when I say I see, it's not like I'm seeing you. It's my senses, my sense eye. So you have energetic. You have lots of animals that are waiting to connect to you, but they're all waiting. They're fine. There's no panic because they know that actually in their time frame you're already there, but you haven't come to that place yet. So again, it's hard to describe, but as you were talking, it's almost like there's just this behind you,
like a whole field of horses and dogs.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's not them, the physical horse.
Physical,
it's their energetic, their being, their life force that's there. And they all communicate with each other as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
But on a different frequency. It's so to me, this the horse that is the physical as we are, and that's you have that side, and then you can communicate with the deeper part of the horse, and then it's almost like it's a collective of horse. It's a collective energy, and they speak on behalf of each other, but they don't just speak about horse related things because they want us to feel what you're understanding. And many people are realizing that we all have an ability, and there'll be different ranges and different skill sets, because if we all had exactly the same thing, we wouldn't be reaching out to other people and learn and experience life.
Brilliant.
Yeah, they know where to be. Have you ever heard of a lady called, I don't know if you will have done, she was an English lady called Julie Dicker. She's no longer with us in physical.
No, I don't think so. No.
And it's what horses, I think it's called What Horses Say. I'll have to send you a link to it. And
Yes,
it's a
please.
book, and I read it with literally in a couple of days. And it's the story from the communicator, and then it's a story from the lady that was helping her write the book, from the animal's perspective. And it was such an interesting read, because there's lots of different stories. And there was one story about this poor horse was at it was at a fair, a sale, and Julie was walking down through the sale, and there was all these horses in these little stalls, and she'd passed this one horse, and she sort of went past it, and she was aiming for somewhere else, and she got this feeling that she needed to go back and look at this pony, look at this horse. And she looked, and she thought, it was just stood then. It looked so tired, but it was trying to stand up, because it just looked like it got no energy. And anyway, I think she ended up buying this horse, and when she communicated with it, it was its last chance, and the horse recognized the energy of this woman, so he was trying to get her attention. And when she did come back again, he was tugging at her clothes, literally tugging at her clothes. So that's when she started to listen. But there'd been stories where horses had been tied up with their heads to the tails and left in a stall to teach them a lesson. There was one horse with a pitchfork that had put through its body. There was all these scars, and these animals were relaying what had happened to them through their lives. But there was funny stories. There were stories about a horse that didn't want to be ridden, so it would go lame every time the owner. Every time, and I've told people this, and they go, "No, they don't do that." I go, "Yes, they do."
They do. Yeah, I've seen.
It's not, but it's not to be awkward. It's because actually they know that you can't hear what's going on when you're riding them. So rather than them do something that they don't want to do, like dump you, they just go lame.
Oh yeah. Well, because people have said, oh, they just fake it. Some of them just fake it, and for the most part, I think horses don't fake it, but some are smart enough that they will. And they learn very quickly. They're absolutely brilliant animals. And that's why, it really hurts me a little bit when I hear people talk about them as if they're not intelligent, or if they're doing something on purpose. And I'm like, for the most part, they don't really have that capability. Like, they're just so authentic, unless they've learned or they're living from a past experience. But I will say, just saying that, like, the more I know, the more I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
I'm constantly second guessing everything I thought that I knew. The more I learn. And I think that's what's so amazing about horses, and why I love being on this journey, because even the person I was 6 months ago is not the same horse person I am now. Since I met Celeste, and I like you said, in these moments, you have these continual light bulb moments, but it is just amazing when we start to listen to them. And some people will say, like, my horse's personality changes so much. And I'm like, well, once they know they can tell you things, like, they change a lot. They come out of their shell, or they, some horses that have appeared to be very quiet. I have a few clients who have bought these super quiet dead broke horses, and they've just been so internal about everything. And then when we start to help them feel better and help them, have a voice, all of a sudden they're this spunky, athletic, super personable, like tons of personality. And they're like, but I kind of like them when they're really quiet. I'm like, well, sorry for your luck. Like, this is just who they actually are. And, it's not anything to not want. It's just like, I say to them sometimes, it's like, it's forcing you to level up. Like, it's a challenge in a way. The horse is asking you to meet them where they are now. Right. And, to become a better rider, or to become more empathetic, or to have more patience, or, that's the way I kind of view things, is that, a horse has arrived to us to help us evolve, and to teach us, and for us to also learn. Like, that's totally what I believe. And horses, like I said, I've just, even like my own personal horses, the ones that have arrived to me, even since I went through the whole lameness journey, it's like, they were just here to teach me more about lameness, and, and teach me more about, like, before I had raised my horse. So he had never taken, he'd never had a lame step. He'd never had, some of the behavior I saw, but he'd also never had an abscess. Like I didn't know about, ulcers. I didn't know about a lot of the stuff because I just never, he was just a healthy, pretty chill dude. And he didn't work. Like he only worked for a short amount of time. And then you have horses coming. You're like, well, what does that behavior mean? Or what does that mean? And it was funny having these horses arrive. And then it's like, oh, because I need to learn about this, or because I need to learn about this, or because I need to learn about this. And like, they just continue to, and that's the way I kind of view it. And even when I decided to retire him, I'm like, this is an opportunity. This isn't I'm retiring him. I think he was actually 17 at the time. You and my sister were just doing the math. He was 17, I think, coming 18 when I retired him. And, I knew there were other people competing on horses older than him and that they had kept them running. And I was like, but, it's an opportunity for a new start. I've had this horse since I was, I was 12 when he was born. And I was, how old was I at the time? 20 something. And I was like, it's an opportunity for a new horse and new lessons and new opportunities. And, old me from 5 years ago probably wouldn't have thought that way because he was a champion. I knew I could take him in and he would win. But it wasn't about winning anymore. It was about the process and, having that whole shift in mindset that, when one thing appears to be ending, I say to people all the time, like, there was another coach I was talking to and she's like, oh, these clients fired me and blah, blah, blah. And they were people that were really challenging clients and she would complain about them to me. And I'm like, girl, this is an opportunity. This isn't a firing. Like, I'm like, they just created space for you to get 2 more clients that are actually in alignment with who you are and what you want. And, don't feel like, yeah, sure. Have she's younger. So she's like, but, I did so much for them and I can appreciate that still says everything about you and nothing about them, right? Like you did so much for them. And if they didn't appreciate it, that's not anything about you. Like that is them and their perspective. And again, it just created an opportunity for new clients that are more in alignment. And that's the way, like when I shifted my mind to that, if something leaves or you lose a friendship or, if you're in business and you lose a client, well, was that client really aligned with you in the first place? Or clearly not, or they wouldn't have left. Right. Or, it's just creating an opportunity. So I kind of see, I don't want to call it loss, but yeah, like loss or, parting ways, whichever, it's all just opportunity. And I think some people, they feel like, oh, the horse isn't a match for them and they feel guilty about, helping them find a new partner. But I'm like, but it's an opportunity for you and the horse. Like, I'm the type of person that I don't give up on horses. I do absolutely everything to help owners. But then we realistically, if, we get all the information, we get to a point and the owner's like, I just don't think we connect, or I don't think this horse will, be everything that I want it to be. And I'm like, okay, well, then that may be our sign that it's an opportunity for both of you, right? Because if you also don't love this horse and feel like it is everything you ever wanted, are you going to, show up with that energy every day when you want to ride them or work with them? So it's also an opportunity for the horse to go find someone who will absolutely adore them and worship them and, not worship them, but you know what I mean? Like who will really love them with their whole heart and feel like they are the most special, amazing horse in their entire world, instead of being with an owner who, they're the horse and they're the horse that I have and they're okay. And, as an individual, you want the best for the horses too. So, I saw a little Facebook post today and it was like, don't shame people for selling horses. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Don't because some people just don't connect. And again, I see everything as an opportunity. So I'm like, that's an opportunity for the horse and for the rider to make new connections and, to be appreciated and to feel that fulfillment and joy that, they can bring to other people or a new horse will bring to that owner. And, like I said, we do everything we can, but at the end of the day, I'm also very realistic that if it's not a good match, or if they feel like, if they're energetically not in it or feeling that connection, then it's not fair to the horse to keep them either at that point. And that's, it's interesting part of our journey. But I think that if we, change and look at all of our life like that, it makes you a lot happier of a person. It makes life a heck of a lot more enjoyable than focusing on what you've lost and instead focusing on what you've just created, space for or an opportunity for that thing that'll be even more alignment to arrive. And I this really helped me through a lot of hard decisions as well. because I'm just like, well, yes, you can weigh what you're going to lose, but I think you should always weigh what you could potentially gain anytime you're making a hard decision.
Absolutely, absolutely. As you were chatting away there, I was thinking, okay, so this so if this doesn't make any sense, then just please say. As you were talking, I got this picture of this horse.
Okay.
And it's almost if you imagined a horse's head nuzzling almost in the crease of your neck with the nose near your chest. And I just saw this picture of this horse doing this. So as you were talking, I was asked. I don't ask it. Sort of it goes that way. What does this mean? What are you referring? And you carried on talking, and then it was almost as if the horse was saying, "I knew." So I know you said you was pregnant, didn't you? You was expecting your baby. Yeah. So, but the horse came through later and they said, "But I knew this before you did."
Oh, really?
So does that make sense?
I was like, I just thought of my own horse there for a moment, but she's not very affectionate. Like,
okay,
she's still not that affectionate.
Okay, so this horse was, so maybe it was showing me. She was showing me.
Yeah.
Let me just see if. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to make it fit, and I don't want to add anything that's not
there.
No,
for sure.
But it was just saying.
Yeah.
That they was aware, and it was this feeling that they was aware.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't mean anything, that's fine.
Because, not so
this
much in this moment, but it wouldn't surprise me that the horses knew before I did.
They do sense it. It's so funny. I had a barefoot trimmer who's had a baby now, and she didn't tell me she was expecting, and Toots could be a little bit because she with her balance, and she was so gentle and she was nuzzling the tummy. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, Toots is really sweet with you today." Then as she left, she went, "Oh, she said, I'm really sorry, but I won't be able to do her anymore because I'm going to have a baby." And I went, "That's why she was nudging your tummy."
Yeah.
And
I have had a few sniff it, and I'm like, yes, there's a baby in there. Yeah.
But so gentle and so so gentle.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you like to talk a little bit about Celeste? So I know you've mentioned a few times, and how you two met and what it is you're actually doing together.
Yeah, so again, this is the universe arriving to me. So this buckskin horse had come to me, and we'd done a bunch of connection work, and he was making leaps and bounds because when the owner reached out, she had purchased him at the end of May and brought him home, and she went to ride him, and he exploded and bucked her off, and then she had gone back to some groundwork, and she knew he was green, but like definitely had not seen that behavior. But then it had just kind of deteriorated into this point where she couldn't catch him, and he had he was cared for by her mom, and he'd had a couple of just these huge explosive moments of flight and fright, and had gotten away from her, and she's like, I just need help. So when I met her, I went to see him, and it took us, like, because I tried for about an hour, and he was not having anything to do with me. And even when we removed his herd mate from the paddock, he was still not having anything to do with us. So it took us about an hour and a half just to catch him. And then we brought him in the barn, and he was just not okay. So he came to me, and I just do a lot of like connection work initially, and just letting him, and he had gotten to the point, because we do keep them, I train out of a boarding barn. So he was being kept by himself, and we had gotten to the point where like I would call him and he would come, and we were definitely getting connected. And then as I started to go through some work with him, I noticed that he just, and again, my eye was not what it is today. And that's funny saying that it's only been like about 5 months, but I was like, so he just doesn't look proportionate, and like just doesn't look quite right. And he's just, he's very, very on edge. And I'm like, he's got pain behavior. Like the first day I met her, or met them, I was like, he's got a lot of pain behavior here. Like all of this behavior is like, he is in pain, and we need to figure out why, because there's no acute injury on this horse. And so we had the osteopath out. She comes every like 3rd week. So she had treated him, and we had the PMF practitioner out. I have an amazing PMF practitioner. And she treated him, and we saw some improvement, but also when we got into the point where I was having him move around me, I noticed an inconsistent right foot head bob. And then when I I just had the tack in the arena, and I was like, I picked up the saddle pad, and he like left. Like he got to the end of my 12-foot line and was like, don't even bring that near me, lady. And I'm like, that's not normal. And when I went to check his back, he was still back sore. And I was like, okay, this horse hasn't had a rider on him in 6 months. You know, he was with me for just about a month at that point. Didn't have I do not work these horses. Like he hadn't been doing any work. And I'm like, okay, this is strange. So I did reach out to my performance vet and said, you know, I really need you to come take a look at this horse, because I'm not sure. You know, I've had my osteo, I've had PMF, and just around that same time that I'd reached out to them, I saw one of Celeste's posts come up. So sometimes when I'm on Instagram, I'll go to like the search thing and it'll just show me random things that I know the algorithm thinks I'll be interested in. But there was, for whatever reason, I was just drawn to this photo, and it was just Celeste, I think, in hand on the ground with a horse. But I clicked on it and I read her post and I was like, oh, who is this lady? And then I started going through and reading some of her posts, and I was like, oh my God, I got to reach out to her about this horse. And again, I can't remember what specifically it was, but I was like, I need to reach out to her. Like, I was like, I need to connect with her. And we actually connected, and she told me her initial consult fee. And I told the owner, and we're like, well, let's wait and see what the vet says, because the vet was already coming. Not that she's expensive, right? But at the time, like for her initial full workup, it's $300 US. That's public knowledge. So, you know, we have the vet coming already, and we've just done all these other treatments. We're like, okay, well, let's see what the vet says. But then in our communication, she said, oh, by the way, like, if you're a trainer, like I'm just about to do this master class, so I think you'd be interested. And then at that same time, I again started diving more into her posts and reading her things, and then signed up for the masterclass right away, because I was like, okay, well, this makes a lot of sense that I come in and learn, you know, what she's sharing. And then I can't remember exactly how it evolved, but it was along the lines of, I think we energetically just connected instantly. We've had a lot of things happen that were very similar in our lives, like the head injuries and, you know, unhealthy relationships with men. And we both dated narcissists at some point. And we're both Indigenous. So I'm not full Indigenous, but I'm a quarter Huron, and she is from Hawaii and has some Indigenous in her as well. So we connected on multiple levels. And then I can't even remember, but for some reason, shortly after the masterclass, I think I just started messaging her a couple things, and like sharing in the group, and then I offered to help, because I was already doing at that time, it was behavior and performance assessments. So I would basically, people could send me photos, and we call it mark it up. So I would put some lines on, and just really to help an owner see what I'm seeing. So I had like a color coding. And so I was like, well, hey, like if you want, like I'll make a video and put it in the group. And I just kind of offered to start helping. And then we just started chatting more and more in the background, and just really clearly like got each other, and like really just connected energetically. And we have very, very just similar life experiences. We started chatting, and, you know, I started explaining to her some of the work I had been doing, and how I just felt like I just had gotten to the point, like I said, where I was like, I feel like I'm going to have to go be a body worker. Cause I also was getting to that point where I don't want to depend on other people to help the horses that come to me. And I just felt like I just need a whole other realm of knowledge. And then she arrived and just taught me how to see. And that's how I say, I'm like, she taught me how to just see in a whole other perspective, like how to look at the horse. And these are the layers of my paramedic anatomy and physiology, pathophysiology background coming in. And the way I think my brain works is I can literally look at a horse and almost like see inside of them, if that makes sense. Like I can look at the outside and kind of see what's going on structurally on the inside. And then her going through her class and listening to and seeing her anatomy and having her explain all these connections to me, I could just see it. Like I could just see it. I could just totally understand it. And we were joking that basically I'd done all the prerequisites to this course. Like I'd done, you know, the personal work, the holding space and time, right? So allowing processing, having the conversations with horses, like energetically, physically, in real time. Like I say, like I really listen to the horse, and through my body language, I communicate to them that I can see, like I acknowledge them. I can see what they're telling me. And so I'd done a lot of the work and was already doing rehab and was already, in this realm. And she just gave me this, I felt like the kind of missing piece to understand what I was seeing. Cause there were things I was asking, my vet about or my osteo about. And I'm like, but what is this? And why is this happening? And people couldn't really give me a great answer. And now in hindsight, I understand that it's the developmental, it's the compensation patterns, it's what's unique to horses that I was seeing, and I was picking up that it's not right, but no one could really tell me why until I met Celeste. And now I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. And we've just connected. And then, so Celeste just had a baby, like less than, I think we're still under 2 months ago. Yeah, maybe just coming up on 2 months. And then we were just chatting, and it was so funny because I was actually about to ask her if I could start incorporating this work in what I was doing. And I think literally the next day she messaged me and said, hey, like, I know you get it. Can we start working together? Like, can I start referring people to you? But obviously I'm your mentor, and I'm going to still be here as your mentor. And basically you'll be apprenticing under me, and, we'll remain in constant communication. But she's like, you get it. But she also felt that, with the work I was already doing, I had all of these pieces, and a big piece of it is also helping the humans and being able to read the human energy and having sometimes difficult conversations, because, I'm very empathetic to, owners, but also professionals. And like I said, when I'm dealing with owners who have, they're trusted trainers, they're trusted veterinarians, they're trusted farriers. And I look at the horse and I'm like, so I say the horse's body doesn't lie. So even if your trainer is saying that they're doing this and they're doing that, and your farrier says the feet are fine and your vet can't find anything wrong with your horse, these are all the things I'm seeing in your horse's body. And that's not always an easy conversation to have, right? Because, and I always try and hold space for that and say, listen, it's just, they're doing the best they can with what they know, but they don't, everyone, and if they're a good professional, they'll admit they don't know everything, right? And I don't know everything, and no one knows everything. So it's not wrong if, based on what they know or what they've been taught through generationally or through their education, it's not the most up to date, or, it maybe actually means a little bit more than they're giving credit to this whole picture. And, to be able to have that conversation, and then the owner not get super mad and, go and ream out everyone for not knowing this, right? Because I'm like, I don't want that to happen. I really try and hold space for other professionals that, we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And, like I said, until 6 months ago, I could tell there were some things going on with horses, but like the way I look at them now is a completely different set of eyes than I had 6 months ago. So, I hold a lot of space, and I have that ability to have difficult conversations with owners, or, with some of my clients, it's more about me coaching them than it is about how to even do the balance for movement method. Like, it's about helping them explore, like, what are their personal boundaries? How are they energetically, are they holding enough space? Are they patient enough? And sometimes it's more about helping the owner than it is to actually help the horse. Like, do you know what I mean? So, when we started talking, and she said to me, like, I know I can trust you with this work. I tell her almost every single day how grateful and how appreciative and how much I love her for trusting me and allowing me to help with this work and help to educate literally the entire horse industry on what we're doing. Because like I said, it's just a whole other way of seeing. And the biggest thing that I think I've taken from this too is, like, I knew that in some cases, because I work with a lot of air quotes traumatized horses, right? And like, we've done the work and we've done some stuff, but they still have. And I was getting to this point where I'm like, well, does this horse have PTSD, or are they still in pain? But in my mind, I've kind of gone through my differential diagnosis list. So in medicine, we say, like, when you're presented with a set of complaints or like symptoms, signs and symptoms, there's all of these different causes that could be potentially, at the root of it. And then we do tests and we do diagnose it, or do, questioning and diagnostics, and we try and, rule things in and rule things out. And with a lot of these horses, the vets have gone through their entire diagnostic list. I had gone through my entire diagnostics list. So I'm like, okay, well, it must be behavior. And then I meet Celeste, and she's like, or it could be nerve impingement. And I'm like, well, duh. Like, humans get nerve impingement. I'm like, I've had so many patients in the back of my ambulance with sciatica or with, a slip disc in their back, or thoracic outlet syndrome. Like I know one of my medic coworkers, he came up in the office when I first met him because he was dealing with thoracic outlet syndrome in his own like chest, causing all this numbness and weakness and weird sensations in his arm. And so I'm like, I've met tons of people. And then when I started looking at horses and the fact that they don't have collarbones, like, do people appreciate that? I don't think we do, in the industry at the, the weight that we should. And when I met her and I was like, oh my God, nerve impingement, like, oh, I'm like, why aren't people? And now, now we're on this mission to help people, see the horse in this other way, understand, like, because we do talk about the thoracic sling quite a bit and it's not a buzzword to us. It's crucial that people understand this is where the horse's core starts. And, I'll give you my little talk that I give people about the spine and the pelvis, because I've added this since the last podcast. I've realized, how many times do we look at the horse's skeleton and, we see the spine? Does everyone appreciate that the spine at the bottom is actually flat and that the vertebrae processes come up from basically the flat spine, right? There's not like a human spine that naturally has a curve. When you're looking at your horse, the back is curved because of the different lengths of vertebrae process. But more than just about half, and in some cases more than half, of the thoracic vertebrae that, again, is not supported by a collarbone in a horizontal animal, is from the back of the wither to the base of the neck. So when people are thinking about the horse's core as just the abdomen and the back, you're missing literally the most important part of the core, because the spine is literally from the sacrum forward, just dangling between the front legs. Essentially, there's nothing there but muscle. And if you think about how long, like I have my little textbooks here. I don't think it'll show from maybe, but I literally, we can't see it. But basically the spine, and like I have this one, Top View, and this is a $6 coloring book from Amazon that I highly recommend everyone get. It's called Horse Anatomy. I don't know. It's just amazing, but I just recommend everyone get it because there's this really great shot of the horse from above. And it's really great to show clients when I'm like, from seeing it from above, you can really appreciate how much horse is ahead of the sacrum and how much weight that is. And, I think a lot of us think, okay, well, we know horses are grazing animals. Some people have heard that, 55 to 65 to 70% of their weight is on the forehand. But what does that mean for their spinal integrity and for their development and for what their core actually is? When we're talking about the horse, and then you think, okay, well, some people will say a horse is not meant to be ridden. Well, why do people say that? Well, because their spine is not meant to have extra weight on it. But the cool part is if we develop their core properly, starting with the thoracic sling. And sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog in the background. He's making funny noises. But when we do start and look at the thoracic sling, because again, it's super important. But at the end of the day, I kind of view this work now as like prerequisite to ever wanting to sit on a horse, because we need to make sure that they can activate that sling and actually support the spine and not just depend on the abdominals and the back muscles to hold us up as riders. And when it's not properly developed, and like someone just shared in the group this morning, he was I think a yearling coming 2-year-old, has had no work, like no actual work. She's done the first step of the method and very inconsistently because of her own health things. And he's her baby horse. And the photo she posted, and we were all just like jaw on the floor because she hasn't developed this horse. Like, it's not like she spent all this time taking him through gymnastics exercises, but you look at him and you're like, he looks like he's been at work, but he hasn't. She's just showed him a different way of standing and moving, and that it might be a good idea. Like, it might feel better to do this instead of that. So it just goes to show that a lot of horses, before we even start training them, may be in compensation, may be in dysfunction. And this is what, when people, we talk about this work, and me and Celeste we're going to get on that other podcast again and do some follow-up, but we talk a lot about the thoracic sling, but this whole program is about the whole horse and about, developing the entire being. Yes, we start with the thoracic sling, but it's more about, their mind, their body, their energy, their being able to move all their limbs in all four cardinal directions, and to be able to carry us for, the longevity of their life without falling apart or developing these compensation patterns that will lead to lameness. And it's just been amazing, because I'm like, it just makes so much sense. Like when I, now that I've started to, like, I have two anatomy books sitting right here, but when I started to see it this way, I was like, oh, so this is just a prerequisite to ever riding a horse. Basically, like, what I thought was important when starting a horse, I'm like, we'll add this in there. It's probably the most important. Because it's cool because they are so receptive to it too, because it feels better. And they have this ability, but instinctually they won't necessarily tap into it until we show them how. And then once we show them how, they're like, oh, well, this feels better, so I think I'll just do this now. And I went to see a client, like, just as an example, I went to see her, and she's like, I've been really busy, haven't done anything with him in 3 weeks. And we're both like, well, clearly he's been doing the work himself, because he looked completely different. And like his chest and his back and his trapezius and his thoracic spine, it looked so much better. And she's like, I honestly haven't been here much. Like, he's just doing it on his own. And that's the other part of what I love about this work is, in the rehab world, it's very structured. I think we try and almost mirror it like physiotherapy. And sometimes I think things get over complicated. And I like to leave owners feeling empowered that, like, they can really do this, and it's not complicated, and the horse is going to feel better after the work. And a big piece of this is getting them out of compensation first. And I think this is a huge hole in kind of training and rehab. Like, again, I'm still very new to, like, kind of the rehab world, but there's a lot of recommendations to strengthen a horse, like, from the get-go. A lot of people think, oh, your horse is weak, pole work, hill work, like, they're doing all these things. But I'm like, but you have to first look at, does the horse even have access to their body to do those things properly? And that's also where we start in this program, is if the horse doesn't have access and they're in a deep compensation pattern, you can't go to strengthening that. And this is part of this makes sense to me from my bodybuilding background. Especially, even when I was in a car accident and I was being told at physio, I need to strengthen, my back is weak. Well, I couldn't engage my back because my chest was so constricted, and everyone missed that. So until I opened my chest, I couldn't properly engage my back. Yeah, I was trying and I was doing it, but I was doing it, like, in compensation. And so I can empathize with the horses in that. I can be like, okay, well, I get it. Like, and they're so amazing that they will do whatever we ask them to do. But I say they borrow from Peter to pay Paul in a lot of the cases. They will figure out a new way to do what we're asking them to do. It just may cost them somewhere else in their body. So now that I kind of, again, I'm the type of person too, once I know better, I have to do better. I can't really skirt around it. I'm part of the hard conversations is, no, you can't take your horse to that barrel race. That would be detrimental for all of these reasons, or some people ask, well, can I still ride and do this work? And I said, well, honestly, like, you could, but based on this, and this, it's probably better that you don't. Obviously, I'm not telling you what to do with your own horse, but my recommendation would be to not ride them, because they can't even hold themselves up. So if you sit on them, they really can't hold you up. And then they're going to be deeper in compensation, and you're just going to strengthen dysfunction. And I want, to continue to share this message of, if someone tells you your horse is weak somewhere, don't just get out the ground poles. Like, make sure they can actually walk correctly. And, a lot of people just don't know what that looks like. I didn't even really know what that looked like until recently. So again, it's just, we're trying to share this information because there's so much more to it, but that's, I guess I could go on and on, but that's a big piece of how I think my perspective has changed a lot. And it's been really, I say, the most rewarding to help horses that have been kind of like, they're at the, I don't want to say the end of the rope, but like, no one else has been able to help them, because it's not an acute injury. It's not, that they need injections. It's not that they have a fracture. It's not that, they need more massage, they need more chiro. It's truly developmental. It's like, it's a training. Like, we need to teach them how to change their posture. And that can't come from an injection. Like, massage definitely helps. Chiro definitely helps, but we have a ton of body workers in this class as well, because if they go in and release everything, but the horse doesn't then change how they move themselves through space, they just get tight again, or they just go back into their old patterns. So a lot of these body workers are starting to understand that it's, you know, it's just kind of putting a Band-Aid on. And that's why when I met Celeste, I was like, oh, you've been through this. Like, she went through the, you know, was a trainer, was introduced to body work, became a body worker herself, and then quit training because she realized that however she was riding these horses, as successful as she was, it was creating dysfunction in the body. And then she went to figure out why. And so I thank her all the time for doing the extra steps so I didn't have to, you know, in a way, because I was on that path. I was like, well, now I'm going to have to become a body worker and this. And then I would have just probably followed a very similar path to her. But now I'm like, oh, I can help people, you know, see differently. And that's a big part of, like, if you do a consult with me, I literally get the textbooks out. Like, I educate as much as I look at your horse and tell you what I'm seeing. I make sure that you have that base understanding and that you can start to see what I see, because again, it's so important that we don't just, you know, do the balanced movement method. You understand why you're doing it, what the goals, and that's why it's so different than a lot of other programs that are, okay, you're going to do 5 minutes, then you're going to do 10 minutes, then you're going to do this. It's like, yeah, we want to pay attention to how much the horse can do, but it's more so about how they feel about the work, and like that it feels good for them, and that, you know, we're reaching goals within it more so than, okay, you've done this amount of time, now we're going to do this amount of time, now we're going to do this amount of time. It's very different in that respect, but I think that's what I like about it, because again, like, as an athlete, yes, it's good to have measures, but it's also good that we change. I say we change from the inside out. And, you know, we want the horses to feel good in this and to change the way they move and the way they stand, because it feels better. And then they go out and they do that in the field for the other 23 hours of the day, not just when they're with us for the, you know, half an hour to an hour. We want them to literally feel it from the inside out and change. And that's also why, like, some of the photos I share on my social media, it still blows my mind when people send me photos, you know, because it'll be like, I even have photos within 15 minutes, horses look completely different. But again, it's like, well, when you understand what we're doing and how we're helping the horses find the sense of relief, their fascia will also, their whole body will take a sigh of relief. And you just see this like exhalation and their whole body soften. And, you know, in some cases that happens incredibly quickly, because again, it's just been how they've been holding themselves, but they won't necessarily realize that, oh, if I just maybe, you know, well, the comparison is us. So if you start to get tense and your shoulders start to kind of creep up and your neck gets tight and you maybe get a headache, or, you know, you start to have postural pain, we know that that can be from how we're sitting or how we're standing. So we'll, you know, drop our shoulders, roll them back, we'll sit up straighter, we'll self-correct. But the horses just go deeper into compensation. They don't know how to self-correct. And with this work, we show them how they could stand and, you know, they could move. And then they're like, oh, wait, this feels better. And then you start to see them adapt it. And that's what I say to the owners too. Again, it's not about, yes, this is what we're doing, but you have to then test the work. You have to then, you know, allow the horse to just, you know, show you what they're going to do or where they're going to put their head or how they're going to walk. And you need to let them show you and let them have the opportunity to adopt it on their own as well. So it's very cool because it's also a degree, like I said, of kind of stepping back and helping owners, you know, not micromanage their horses. We're truly trying to develop athletes that, you know, have the ability, but also, you know, the responsibility to move themselves through space, and us not have to constantly manage them, micromanage them, hold them in positions, you know, constantly correct them. We show them, we offer to them, and then we kind of step back and say, how does that feel? What do you think about that? How does that feel? And, you know, it is different for some people because like, wait, I correct them, not correct them, like hold them there, not hold them there. And it's like, no, just let them, like, now that we've shown them, like, let them explore it, right? Let them. And it is different. And some people are like, wait, so I'm not just doing this so many times? And I'm like, not in the beginning. Like, it's more about the goal. It's not so much about the number of reps initially and et cetera. So it's been pretty cool, but it definitely aligns with like how I would train myself in the gym too. Like I would track what I was doing, but I would, know when to push myself and when I've, had enough for the day, or, it is a lot of feel, but I think that's also good because we're helping owners develop feel and, awareness and
Mm-hmm.
being present and holding space. And yeah, so it's just been like, obviously I can go on and on. I will stop for that. But yeah, it's been pretty amazing work. And like I said, I'm so grateful to be a part of it, but I also still feel like I've got so much to learn, like so much to learn from her and from other people in the group as well. But it's been amazing to be helping horses and helping owners. And like I said, when I get some of the photos, I'm just like, I can't even believe that's the same horse. Like, sometimes or you can't even really see it. And then you put the photos beside each other and you're just like, I can't even, like, is this real life? Is this real life? Like it's funny. Like we send little mind blown emojis to each other all the time because we're just like, I can't even, but again, it just happens over and over. And I'm going to keep being surprised and love every minute of it because it's amazing. It's amazing work.
When you're passionate about something, it's just lovely but you want to share it with the whole world, don't you?
Yeah.
And it can be your little thing, but whatever it is, but you just want to share it because it makes you feel that you just feel different about something.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be to do with horses, to do with yourself, to do with something you've done at work, or it's just that feeling of excitement and the adrenaline, and you just want to, you want others to know what a difference whatever this thing is, how it can makes you feel. And it's very much about teaching the person, because most of the things we deal with is a symptom. It's not the cause.
Exactly.
In fact, more than we realize. And a lot of people are looking for the answer, and they get so far and they have a feeling that it's still not quite right, but they don't know where else to go. But now there is more knowledge, and I think a lot of people are coming into their own with their own intuition, with their own inner guidance. And as you said earlier, when you look at a horse, you see like x-ray vision. I believe that your intuition is giving you that anyway. So it's almost like a sense you know it, and then you see it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So the guidance is there, but as humans, we have to explain it in a way that somebody else can understand and learn from that. If we just said, "Oh, this is going on, and I'll fix your horse, and I'll do this," and then you send them away, they that's lovely. But if they don't change what they do or how they perceive something, then it's gonna come back. It's not going to change a huge amount, and it starts with us. It starts with a human to change how they see things, how they interpret something, but also not being afraid to trust their gut, because it's not something. We all know about it, guidance and your gut feeling, but it's not taught to such a degree where you trust that. And even if somebody in a professional manner says to you something, but your gut says no, you need to look at something else, or you need to look further. You have to have the courage to say, thank you, but actually I'm sensing something else. And it's not a reflection
of them
on the vets, on the body workers, or any, because they're trying their best with what they know. But it will only take you so far.
And I think that's what, I always try and say to the owners. It's that, they're doing the best they can with what they know. And not everyone knows everything. And, like vets will tell you, if you talk to vets, like they then specialize in horses, but they had to learn everything about so many different animals. Like there's just so much to being a doctor, and sometimes developmental and biomechanics and, seeing the horse in this way, it's not taught. So, even if, like, I've talked to several vets and some know about nerve impingement, but don't know what to do about it. Or some don't even know about nerve impingement. Like there was a vet that shared with Celeste and shared, like, I'll share it now, but they, you know, they brought up sciatica. Like, they asked when they were in school, can horses get sciatica? And she said that she was laughed out of the lecture, you know, and people were like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I show people the horse's sciatic nerve all the time in my textbook. It's bigger than a garden hose, basically. And it runs along their glutes just like ours does. And I have videos from clients of their horses getting a sciatic nerve impingement, and it looks like someone hit their horse in the butt with a cattle prod out of nowhere. And I'm like, Celeste, is this sciatica? She's like, that is a fantastic example of what a sciatic nerve fire looks like. And, you know, again, it's not their fault, but also when, you know, again, my perspective, when you're building a vet curriculum and you have so many things to cover, and, you know, how do you cover everything? You can't. But, you know, and I think there are a lot of good vets out there that will say, well, I've gone through everything. I've looked at everything I can look at, and I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you. Right. And that's all that we ask of them, is that maybe we don't say, you know, we don't dismiss the owner's concerns. We, you know, we acknowledge that, yeah, okay, we just tell them, well, I've been through everything that I can think to look at, or, you know, within your budget or whatever. And if you still think that there is something, then maybe, you know, continue to look and explore different practitioners or different things, but, you know, don't gaslight owners. That's the, like, you know, we don't want that. We don't want people being dismissed for their concerns and belittled and, you know, feeling like, you know, it's not real. Because also some lamenesses, and this is why I love Dr. Audrey DeClue. If anyone hasn't stumbled upon her podcast yet, I highly recommend it. But she came to veterinary later in life, and she says, like, there are things that she was never taught in vet school. But, you know, like, one of her first podcasts was, it's not normal when. Like, it's not normal when your horse pins her ears and threatens to bite you when you're putting a saddle on. It's not normal if you're walking down the aisle and you hear inconsistent hoof beats. It's not normal if your horse pushes all the wood shavings to the back of the stall. Like, there's all of these things. And then she talks about postural versus limb versus positional lameness, or like positional versus body versus limb lameness. Sorry. And, you know, she's like, I wasn't taught that in school. I was taught the 0 to 5 limb lameness scale. She's like, I was, you know, I had to figure out positional lameness and body lameness basically on my own. And she's very open about this in her podcast. And I was like, it's true, because some lamenesses or some dysfunctions will only feel when we're riding the horse, and they will walk straight and they will trot straight and they will flex fine. Doesn't mean that that lameness isn't there, right? Or that unsoundness or that dysfunction isn't there. It just means that you can only feel it when you actually ride the horse. So unless your vet's getting on and riding your horse, right, they may not feel what you're feeling. So it's not right to dismiss that owner and say, no, it can't be, because, you know, I flex them and, you know, I nerve block them and they're fine. Like, or even with palpation, some horses, they won't necessarily palpate sore, but you can see it in their movement. You can see that they don't have full range of motion in their pelvis, or they don't have, you know, a nice swing through their head and neck when they're walking. It's very stationary. Well, it shouldn't be. So it may not palpate up. Just because you can't palpate it doesn't mean that there's not dysfunction there. But at the end of the day, it's not the vet's job to treat it if it's a developmental issue, right? If it's not an acute or chronic illness, it's also not necessarily the vet's job to treat something that needs to be developed, right? Like, here in Canada, vets are not physios. Like, they're not, we don't even have, like, I think we're starting to get more equine physiotherapists. I know they're very much so present in the United Kingdom and starting to become more present in the US, but like, that's not something that I grew up with knowing was even an option, right? So the vets do their best with creating rehab plans, but, you know, it's not like they've gone to school like they have in the UK or somewhere else in the world, where you go and you can go to university, can't you? To be a university or college in the UK, to be a rehab specialist. And that's not a thing here. And that's why I'm a consultant, because I can't go to school to be a rehab specialist for horses. Like, well, maybe not in my area, but I also, something that, you know, people ask me, are you going to get certified specifically in anything? And I, right now, no, because I don't want to be biased, and to, you know, I want to know as much as I can about all the different factors I look at when I'm looking at a horse. But I don't want to just become a body worker, because then I'm also, if I become certified, I'm say it like this, but I'm a little bit handcuffed in what I can say. Or, you know, if I become like a veterinarian, let's say. Well, there's only, like I would obviously have more free speech, but when you're more educated in a certain area, you will also think that those things are more so the problem. So when I say I try and remain unbiased, is I try to just have information about, I know what a balanced foot should look like, and I have, my sister's a farrier. So when I need a consult, I send her the photos and images, and, cause she's the expert. If I'm not sure about a, body thing, I'll send it to Celeste. Like I have people that I consult with. But, when you post a horse, I see this all the time in the groups. Someone will post a horse. The farriers think it's in the foot. The body workers think it's in the, the body. And the chiropractors think it's somewhere else, or, but like what your modality is, of course, you're going to think that it's obviously that is the cause, because that's what you've learned could be the cause. But I want to come in and know about all the causes, and be able to kind of weigh them out against each other and be like, okay, well, the feet aren't great, but they're not bad enough to cause that posture, right? Or, so the pelvis isn't moving great. But if you look at the front end, like they're completely crooked, completely sideways. So I know that will affect the pelvis. So I want to be able to come in when I look at a horse and, like I said, have this kind of unbiased, holistic view. Like I know enough about relatively the majority of the areas that I can look at your horse and be this unbiased set of eyes to help maybe see something that all the other professionals haven't seen yet, or maybe they've tried to correct, but it hasn't fixed the problem, right? Like I've had horses where they were negative plantar angle, right? So in the hind feet, the coffin bone had dropped, and so the farrier wedged the horse. Well, now the horse is worse. Didn't fix the problem. Well, because in some cases that's a symptom of the postural dysfunction. It's not the cause. And so if we go and take away that compensation, sometimes the horses will fail in other places because now you've taken away a compensation mechanism without fixing the reason why they need to compensate in the first place. So that's where, again, I like to come in with this kind of unbiased, like open mind. And I want to definitely learn more about, nerve impingement. I want to learn more about body work. I want to learn more about, correct farrier. I want to learn more about diagnostic testing that vets can and cannot do. Like I want to learn more. And that's why I'm not going to lie, I'm looking forward to being on my mat leave with my baby so I can do all this studying and learn more. But right now I'm not going to take a full multi-year in-depth course in any one of these places. Cause I said, I don't want to become biased. I don't want to get, an inherent bias to one thing or the other. I just want to be able to come in and, help you as an owner kind of look at the entire picture and weigh it out. And maybe, like I said, I specifically, I'm definitely got the eye for the posture and the development now. And then having the behavior knowledge and having a farrier sister and having a Celeste and having all these people, I do have resources to also help me in that process. But that's what where I kind of see myself right now. And like I said, I can't wait. So I have this amazing vet textbook. This is my anatomy of the horse, and I haven't had time to read it. Like I have all these great diagrams and I've been able to scan it, but I can't wait to actually have the time to just sit down and actually read this textbook. It's a vet textbook. And there's a whole section on the back about diagnostics. So I'm like, I can't wait to read this because, again, it's like the more I know, the more I can help. But I want to really extend my list of what could possibly be wrong and have more of appreciation for the different factors and how they could play into the horse and the presentation. Because even, with the developmental stuff, like I've looked at some horses, like I said, that's why I'm recommending x-rays. Because I'm like, we could do the work, but those feet, they're gonna, they're standing in the way of the posture changing. So this is where I'm like, again, I'm also not just like, oh, this is the answer to everything. Like, no, I still look at the whole horse when I look at them. It's not just like automatic balance or movement method. It's definitely like, okay, let's look at the whole horse, the behavior, the nutrition, their living environment, everything. Like when I ask for a history, I ask for everything. And people are like, I'm sorry, it's so long. I'm like, the more, the better. Send me all the things. Like the more information you can give me. Cause again, I may read something and correlate that, but it may mean, it may not be significant to the owner, but then in correlation with the other, maybe a couple of things I'm going to read in the history, I'm like, no, that actually correlates to this, this, and this. And when I do look at horses too, I actually look at them first. I don't I try not to read the history. I try not to read the human perspective. In all honesty, I tell clients this too. I'm like, I don't actually read the history. I look at the movement videos and I look at the photos and I look at the feet and I look at the horse first, and I let the horse's body tell me what I'm seeing. And then I go back and I read the history they've sent me, and I see if things connect or what connects. And, based on what I'm seeing in the body, could this explain some of the behaviors or what they're feeling under saddle or whatever, or, whichever. But that's how I kind of approach things, is I actually look at the horse first without any of the human perspective on it. Because again, people do perceive things differently than me. So I look at the horse and then I read the history, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. This makes sense. This is probably why this, and I kind of like connect all the dots for them. And then we meet and see, and it helps me determine where to start with the horse and what other things. Because I also may say, well, actually, before we can even get started, could you, what's in your budget? Can you have this, or can you have that done? Or, maybe actually you do need to have the vet back out, or, we really should reevaluate these feet, so I do still look at the horse before we get in the in-person as well, or like the virtual, depending on what, to make sure that, I am the right person to help the horse. And in some cases it is like, well, actually, no, you need to go talk to this person or that person. But yeah, I will say that. I'm like, I can go on and on.
Oh dear. So right, okay. So I'm conscious that you've got an appointment soon.
Yes, I do.
Are you still okay for a little bit more time? Are you okay?
Yeah, let's do like a couple more questions. Yeah. I warned her that I was here, and that I would be in touch once I was done. Yeah.
So just if you want to give briefly, so if somebody wanted to contact you, Betsy, what would a consultation consist of? And then how does it go on from there? So if you want to give a little description.
Yes, for sure. So like I said, so right now I have people, so you can reach out to me via Facebook, Instagram, or my website. And we are going to be updating that because right now, if you're looking for a virtual consult, you'll find it under, I believe it's under performance and behavior assessments. And when someone reaches out to me, I do have a wait list right now. I will warn people at that until I'm off on mat leave. Hopefully I'll have a little bit more time. But when people reach out to me, I get their email and ask them, to start. I'll give them a list. In some cases, unless it's quite far out, then I say, okay, when it's closer to your turn, I'll reach out with my list. So basically I look for, I have a whole set of photographs that I ask them to take with descriptions to, because when we're taking, even if you're taking photos for someone to look at your horse, I'll just say this because this is good to know. If you're ever, someone asks you to share anything. So conformation style photos, the horse should be fairly neutral. I don't want owners to actually square their horses up because a lot of horses can't square up when they're in postural dysfunction. So I just want them to stand in the most neutral, common position that they commonly see their horse standing in. And sometimes that may be the mountain goat. I call it, where, the front feet are way underneath and the hind feet are coming under, and they kind of look like they're a mountain goat standing on a rock. I want to see that posture because that tells me a lot of information. So I'll tell them, take photos from either side, from directly in front of the horse, from directly behind the horse. Try and be, right in the middle as you can of them, from tops and all the sides, because when I put all my lines on, I don't want any distortion. I ask for movement videos. Your classic, what you would consider lameness ones, so walking towards and away from the camera. Also watching the horse walk from the side and at whatever gaits the horse is currently doing. So if your horse is only walking, I just need to see walk. Don't take your horse who isn't cantering and go out and do trot and canter videos. I just need to see them at walk, and literally 10 seconds is usually enough for me to see how their body is moving through space. And then I ask for a full history. So, everything you can tell me about your horse. So where they live, if they're indoor, outdoor, if they're turnout, what they eat from. So does your horse eat from, a round bale feeder with a slow feed net in, a raised box? Do they eat from the ground? Do they graze? What does their pasture look like? What are you currently feeding them? What are you personally feeling? If it's like under saddle, if it's behavior, or, what are you seeing in your horse? What are your concerns? What have other practitioners found? So if every time your massage therapist comes and they're sensitive in the pole, the wither, and the sacrum, or, the low back, like what are some of the common findings? if they would like to share. Obviously, I'm not fully trained in reading x-rays or anything like that, but I can recognize kissing spine on an x-ray. I can, look at basic hoof x-rays and tell you if they're in, proper alignment or not. So I basically ask for as much history as they can give me. So what do you know about how this horse was raised? And sometimes they say, well, I don't know anything. I bought them at a sale. Well, that's fine. Like it is what it is, right? But if you know of any previous traumas, if you know of any previous injuries, if you bought them from a barn where they were never turned out and now you've brought them home and they're living on 10 acres, like if they spent the first 6 years of their life in a box stall, like that's important for me to know. So I basically ask owners to give me as much, nutrition, riding, environment, friends, lifestyle, behavior, what they're feeling under saddle. Like give me a complete history on your horse, as detailed as you would like. And again, I would rather have more information than less information. Even the things that you may notice that you don't think are significant. Like, does your horse, when you tie them, do they stand still or do they flip their head up and down? Do they move, back and forth? Do they, are they irritated? Can you brush them? Like basically any information you can give me about your horse's behavior, how they live, what you're feeling under saddle, how you've been training them, what type of workload they're under, what you'd like to do also, like for goals. If it's a competition horse, like, do you want to barrel race this horse? Do you want to jump this horse? Like, do you want to event this horse? Like, give me everything you can think of. Basically, I want to know all the things. And then once it's your turn with me, because right now, just working my other job as well, I do go horse by horse down my list. So I will look at everything. Like I said, I look at the photos and videos. I mark up the photos. So I selected the photos that I think will give me the best education back to you. And I draw my lines. And then what I do is I actually use Facebook quite a bit because I can send voice memos. So then I will send each photo back and explain everything I'm seeing and how it correlates with the behavior potentially, or what they're feeling under saddle. And again, sometimes horses move, and that's why it's actually great if owners send me a few photos from the same kind of perspective, because we all know horses will swing their head back and forth or move around. And I do take the photos with a grain of salt, but I can usually, again, with the way my mind works is, if I see something here in the back, and then when I'm looking at the front of the horse and I see more rib cage out to the right, and that correlates with what I saw from the back photo. Again, that's all information that I tie together. And then I basically send all those photos, explain everything I'm seeing. If any other questions come up, I'll ask those, or if I suggest any other investigations. And then once we've kind of had a bit of a back and forth discussion, then we would book a virtual. And even that as well, I do mostly through Facebook, because it doesn't matter if you have, because FaceTime doesn't work for everyone. Everyone doesn't have Zoom. Everyone doesn't have Skype, doesn't have the latest thing, but most people have Facebook Messenger. And through there, I can send, we can basically keep a full record of everything, and it's very accessible. So all the photos and videos, the time we had the FaceTime, I can do the video through there. And then when you send me progress photos, I just go into like previous media files. I can have a look at that horse when you first sent me the photos to what you just sent me. Sometimes I'll put them together for you and send them back to you with what I'm seeing in the difference. So this is how my process has been so far. And then once I go on mat leave, I'm hoping to be able to have a calendar that people can book into, et cetera, once I'm all caught up. But that's how I'm doing things right now. And it's been really amazing. And then I also, so my initial consult is 200 Canadian right now. That's the consult and the first session. And then for follow-ups, it's $100 Canadian. And for everyone who's not in Canada, there's no tax, which is a nice little bonus that some people love to hear about. So that's my process right now. And I do have, I am starting to offer in-person days. So I have a few barns here just locally at the moment where I do go for the day, and I have multiple horses and we do follow-up sessions. And then once I'm on mat leave, I'm sure I'll have more flexibility to go and spend time in, other barns. And I'm going out a couple provinces away to do clinics. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to spend more time in person with people as well. Like virtual is still very, very effective, but it is always great when I can go there in real time, because some people are very hands-on learners, right? Mm-hmm. So I am hoping to have more time to be able to travel within Ontario for sure. And maybe, other parts of the world eventually, but right now I'm just sticking to Ontario and Canada for now. But yeah, that's the process.
I think you've got quite a lot,
Yeah,
a lot to do now, and a lot coming up, and
yeah.
especially with a baby. And how
Yeah.
exciting is that?
Yeah, we're so excited, and we're very fortunate that things happened. We literally got married, built a house, and got pregnant all in 2021. So
Wow.
yeah, COVID definitely didn't keep us down. We're very fortunate that everything kept rolling, and we were not really held back in any way from COVID. We're obviously been very safe,
Mm.
and yeah, we're just looking forward to expanding the brood and having a baby. Like I'm 33, my husband's 37. I'm like, I had to think about that for a second. So we've definitely, developed our careers and spent a lot of time on ourselves and traveling. But we also have really great friends who also have kids and still barrel race and still show us, that life goes on. It doesn't just totally stop because you have a child, and we have some really great support systems. So I'm looking forward to having a baby. And everyone tells me it's crazy. I'm like, I did shift work. I worked night shifts. I lived on, 3 hours of sleep for many years. I'm like, it doesn't scare me so much because I did several years of shift work. And, like there was nights where, you'd get to a base and 20 minutes later, you'd have to go to another base and then another base and another base. So I'm like, I have functioned sleep deprived and saved lives while doing it. So I'm like, I am not as panicked about, being tired. I think because again, I've experienced it before, so I can kind of mentally prepare a little bit for what that period of
Yeah.
time is going to be like. But
Yeah,
again,
and
it's
of
all
course,
about how you frame it. Yeah.
and of course, you're going to give yourself time because having a
Yes.
baby is a big thing on your body and your hormones and
Yes.
everything. But
Yeah.
you're very intuitive, so
Yeah.
you'll allow yourself time, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the horses are great grounding, so
Yes.
you'll have that, so you can go, oh, okay.
Yes, and I'm not like my husband's gonna compete on my horse this year, so I'm not like I have still three training horses as well. Two of them are going home next week, and the other one, Cowboy, the one who had kissing spine, he'll be with me for another couple weeks. But yeah, I'm not really showing much right now. People just keep laughing. I had a big dinner. So I've been pretty fortunate in that respect that I haven't really felt very pregnant, which has been a good thing. And baby's starting to kick now, but I haven't been tired. I haven't had terrible morning sickness. I've been very very productive, but I'm definitely looking forward to slowing down because my memory. I've had baby brain since about week 8. And yeah, it's probably the most stressful part about being pregnant is how much I forget. So that's why I have like I said, I take people's emails and I have my little system set up because I'm way more forgetful than I was prior to being pregnant. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to kind of slowing down and going back to yoga and just enjoying the horses. And it's nice, like I said, because I'm able to do a lot of this from the ground. I don't have to get on and ride horses, and obviously I won't be able to do that soon. I won't be getting on strange unknown horses, that's for sure. I did it on the weekend, but it's all risk evaluation, right? But I'm a good judge of the horse's energy, and I know that they'll, like you said, they know I'm pregnant, so they're gonna take care of me. But I can just feel my pelvis is getting to the point where it's like, yeah, Betsy, we don't need to be riding all day, every day. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just, having more time for self-care and kind of slowing down. Cause yeah, I basically work from 6 till 8 or 9 every day. And yeah, I'm ready to just take a
Just to
breath.
chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, bless you. I bet you are.
Yeah.
Right. So before you go,
Yeah.
there was quite a few questions. So for the people
Oh,
that have
wow. Okay.
joined us,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your comments. I didn't want to put them up while Betsy was talking because
Yeah. No
it
problem.
it spoils the flow. So
Hmm.
but you can see these will be on Facebook anyway.
Okay.
So you go on the
I can
stream, so
always
you
go back
can.
and answer some of them too. Yeah,
Yeah, but
for
this
sure.
so I don't know if you know any of these people. Can you see the comments as well?
I can't. No. Well, I'm
You
not. I'm not on my Facebook. Can I see them somewhere?
You should be able to see them through here. Is there not a section? Have you got comments off?
Oh no, I can see them now. Okay,
There you go.
I
So you
can see it
can.
now.
So is there anybody there that you know?
Yeah. Well, Miranda, Claire. Oh, this has happened to my mare a few times. And the change in her the day after I felt strength of emotions was dramatic. Yeah, I'm not sure what that was about. Miranda, we'll talk about animal communicators after. It's my lovely mom. My horse practically. Claire. I guess, yeah, kind of out of context, but if you want to PM me, if you want to message me.
Yeah, so there's a few
Yeah,
there. So thank you
yeah.
to everybody that message. I do like to put them up, but I mean,
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I normally put them up as we're going through, but
Yeah,
sometimes
no worries.
it distracts me, and
Yeah.
I
Oh,
want to focus on
yeah,
and listen to.
yeah.
So that's what you just read.
Oh, yes, and Claudia. Yes, she's fabulous. She is in, I believe, Spain. Forgive me, Claudia. I know you're over in Europe somewhere. And Derek. I
Yeah,
love this. I always stand in awe of the level of sheer knowledge. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's honestly some days I'm like, I honestly though it's funny because I do notice how I lose some other things if I'm not using them as I guess it's all connecting, right? So like when you connect things to other things, it helps you remember them more. Um, but yeah, it's been I think because I do that, I relate a lot of things as I learn them to other things, and then I think it helps me remember them.
You see, my memory is not that brilliant. So I was laughing when you said baby
Baby
brain.
thing.
Well, my
Yeah.
son's over 13. I've still got baby brain.
Well, that's what people are saying. They're like, "Oh, just wait until you have the baby." I'm like, "Oh God."
and I can't remember things, but
Yeah.
so my friends used to laugh at me when I was started
Mhm.
when communication comes. I have a different. It's almost like my posture changes as well, and
Mhm.
it's self assured, if that's the right word, without
Yeah.
sounding egotistical.
Yeah.
And my friends, because you. If you're intuitive, it's not down to just horses, but
Mhm.
that's where
Mhm.
my horse led me. And when I give messages to my friends, I'll go, "That's not you talking because you're so waffy, or
Yeah.
you're so scatty." Sorry, waffy is an English northern word. They'll say
Okay.
you're so scatty, and I'll go,
Yeah.
"Thank you."
Yeah. That's funny though that they can feel that from you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that you sort
Yeah.
of just change. But listen,
Yeah.
it's been absolutely fascinating
Yes.
chatting
Thank
with
you
you,
for
or
having
listening
me.
to you rather. Listening, because that's what I
Mhm.
did. I allowed you. I hope you've enjoyed this interview, this chat.
Yes. I
And
have.
I would love to know, I'd like to go a little bit more into how it works out for you, and a little bit
Mhm.
more without giving all your secrets away, into
Mhm.
the actual, like how you do working with the client and the horse afterwards when you've done your session, how
Mhm. Mhm.
because you said you allow the horse to just to go off and to figure out how their body moves.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yes,
it's
it'd be
like
nice to talk a little bit more about.
yeah, it's like I don't want to say it like it's allowing them to make a mistake, but it's kind of like how, you have to let your kids stumble. You
Yeah,
know
to
what I mean?
figure
When
it
they're
out.
learning to walk.
Yeah.
Like it's learning when to help them and when to guide them, but then you reach that point where you have to allow them to try on their own because if, like one of the things we do is we do help the horse in some cases lower their head. And in some cases we do kind of guide them then to walk forward from that place, but you can't stay there forever, right? So you have to then, release the horse and ask them to walk, and often we'll see them kind of go back to that space, but if you're holding them there, how do they go there on their own?
Mm.
So a lot of the guiding and the coaching I give owners is, yes, we're going to do this, but as I said, this is what you're looking for in the goals. And as they start to feel better, again, you'll start to see them take on these postures, but you have to allow that. You have to allow them to try. You
Yeah.
have to allow them to explore. And I help them balance within the virtual session, what that looks like, or when the horse is just disassociating, because we see that a lot too, right? Where they're so uncomfortable in their body that they just try and, eat, or they want to chew the lead rope, or they want to go other places because they're not comfortable being in their own body. And when we can maybe draw their attention back to the present moment instead of that, or in some cases I'm like, no, like let them just process that. But when they're actually, when I leave them to the work, I leave them with kind of, for that individual horse, this is what you're going to look for. And this is how, these are going to be your kind of your goals and your benchmarks. But remember, this is kind of your outline, but within that, this is what you're watching for from the horse. So When the horse stops, how, like, don't just drag them to a stop per se, right? Like, you stop and see if they match you or not, right? And I say to them, kind of make it a bit of a game, right? Like when you're walking and you're stopping or you're doing, like, don't be super organized about it. Like, play with your energy, bring it up, bring it down, stop here, stop there, like make it a bit of a game. And see how the horse does, kind of, yeah, like test the work and see, what they do with that, so that they start to explore what we're offering to them and not just constantly you telling them what to do. Right. So initially, yes, it's like when you're teaching someone, they need more guidance, but then, we start kind of watching, like as a coach, I'll be like, okay, they're doing this. Let's just see if they notice. Right. Because that's part of the learning process. And if they don't notice, and then, you leave it for a couple of seconds or depending on what it is. And then you say, and they're like, oh, and maybe it's a less of a cue, right? It's just maybe, a direction with your hand instead of a full contact. And, so I do coach the owners into how to, you need to allow the horse to make the mistake. You need to allow the horse to do, to show you where they're at, basically. And then, this is when you guide them and this is when you don't. And this is, and I do my best to coach them through that. And, some people definitely need more support than others. But some are like, okay, I totally get it. I've got it. I've already have, some relational horsemanship background, et cetera. And they go from there. And then some others like are I have some clients that are extremely detail oriented and I have to break it down for them, like step by step by step by step. But I'm happy to do that, right? Because each individual human also has their own way of learning and their own way of applying. And I totally get that as an educator. So I will help you in any way, shape, or form that I can. I'll put on my little detective cap to make sure that you fully understand what the goals are and how to achieve them. And, if my first explanation doesn't work, I'll find another way to explain it to you or to help you understand or ask you more questions. Or, like I will do my best to set, I always say we want to set the horse and the human up for success. And, so I'll even talk about environment. Like with some of these horses, we're asking them into vulnerable positions. So, going into the arena where they're most anxious may not be the best decision. So we'll talk about that. Like, and sometimes doing the live call, we have to do it where the best service is or where, the safest to do it.
Yeah.
But then I say, once I'm not there and I'm not on, on the phone, can you do this in your pasture? Is your pasture flat? Where does the horse feel the calm and most safe? Right. So maybe you should start there instead of in the arena. So we have a lot of conversations too about environment and skill and comfort level and things like that as well. Because again, in some cases, we're asking the horses to go into a vulnerable position and to be present. And if they're, in the arena and that's a really stressful place for them and it makes them very anxious and uncomfortable, that's not the place to do the work.
Yeah.
Or even a couple of horses lately, I've said, don't do it in the arena because the sand, it's too much work for them to walk through sand. They need to walk on a firm, dirt or, soft gravel surface instead of in the sand because it's too much for them. They can't do it. It's going to keep them in compensation. So you need to do it in their pasture, or you need to do it up and down the laneway, or you need to do the work somewhere where it's not going to, put the horse at risk of going back into compensation. And like, fair warning, my computer, I still have 6%, so my computer's dying.
Oh, we're about finishing it. We've been on nearly 2 hours. Did you realize we've been on 2 hours? I mean, that's normal for my
I know, me too.
church. So it's been absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop you out. So because I want to say quick bye personally. If you, oops, I think we've lost her. Never mind. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Yep, I think we have. Yeah, I think her internet's died, but at the perfect time, so that's fine because she has another appointment. So I'm just going to do that anyway because we're about finished. I'll just message you later and say proper bye. So that was fascinating. I hope that you found that fascinating or of interest. And if you want to message Betsy, the details of her website are linked to this video, and you can watch this again, by the way, and I shall be making it into a podcast and the details will be on there as well. So thank you, Derek, Claire, Wendy, Barbara, Claudia, and Miranda for your comments. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't put them up until the end, but I didn't want to disturb Betsy because I like to listen to as you do and find out what she has to share with us, which is fascinating. So take care, everybody. And I shall be doing another interview on Monday. I'm looking forward to that one too. But in the meantime, from myself and from Betsy, thank you very much for turning up. Thank you for listening and your comments. And I shall speak to you soon. Take care and have a lovely week. Bye for now. Thank you.